Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Secret Science Wednesday. I'm your host, Ashton Forbes. Thank you, everybody, for being in the chat early. Shout out to 0 Point Energy Disclosure. Why shout out to 0 Point Energy Disclosure? Because we need more influencers and advocates for 0 Point Energy. We got to push things along, man. We're at a point where we've found that all this science is there. The public needs to be aware of it. And until they do, we're going to basically just be cave people stuck in Plato's cave, looking at the shadows on the wall, pretending like it's reality. Okay? The MH370 videos are real. We're just going to get right into it here. You can see I'm still banned on social media from Reddit, of course. Can't call them mentally ill, guys. It's bad. Okay, shout out to, I don't know, Purvy, Pyevwry. Purvy. You should take this as like the highest praise, me praising a Redditor. The fact that you have minus 100 comment karma probably tells me you're a little bit too based for Reddit. You probably need to leave Reddit. But, and I don't know, we're not going to read all this here. Instead, we're going to go look at this analysis. I love chat. One more day until we go family friendly. I fucking love these little GIF breakdowns here that people make when they show little clips of like the videos. Because you look at it and you're just like, wow. The first thing they're arguing here is that the luminosity of the plane changes when it goes over or near the clouds. It gets brighter. I think they're right. I'm not sure if it's just an optical illusion, but I think they said when the plane turns, it gets less bright as well. And that definitely seems to be true because there's even little dark spots on the plane. Okay. So these, and here's some more clips of it. Another segment. I might make a video of this, but yeah, right there, you can definitely see there's more dark spots on the plane here as well. Like that, this clip right here, this middle one. Wait, is it this one? Yeah, this one here. Like, how can you not tell? Like, look at the plane itself. It gets darker right here as the plane turns. That's not VFX. That's way too detailed. So, bunch of reasons. And right here before the zap, you can, if you look very carefully, frame by frame, you can actually tell it definitely gets brighter when the plane goes over the clouds. So I just wanted to highlight this because this was good analysis this guy did for sure. And then he compared it to one of the recreations. So like this little stick figure plane. This little stick figure plane. The one guy that made this, like his little stick figure plane. And right away you can tell the dispersion of the smoke trails. There's no dispersion in the recreation attempt. Also, they use this model of the plane, and the model doesn't match because it doesn't have the blobbiness of the infrared radiation coming off the plane. which goes to show you this is 100% real. And like that right there, even though it looks weird, it's because of the infrared radiation on the plane. That's why it doesn't look like a model stickcraft. Like, this is a real video we're watching here. I'm glad these people tried to recreate the videos, because now it's like, oh, we look at this little stick figure thing and we can see all the things that were wrong. The smoke is not dispersing either when they use VFX. It just looks ridiculous right here, honestly. And then this is the real one. And so he shows it out where you can see the dispersion happening here at the like near the beginning at the top. Yeah, right there. That's really good. It's like by the time the plane gets off the frame here, the smoke's already like basically gone back to normal. So good analysis by this guy. He also points out, oh yeah, he just does some comparisons right there. Okay, let's go back to the next thing. Okay. So 0 point energy, this energy that's all around us. Remember the most important things. Space is not empty. There's energy all around us. It's a huge amount of energy. The vacuum catastrophe is what people quote for why they claim there's not this huge amount of energy out there. But this energy explains dark energy, and then probably, you know, many, many, many orders of magnitude more than dark energy as well. As to why we don't see it, it's because it's at an extra dimensional level below our perceptible level. That may sound a little bit kooky, but Kaluza-Klein figured that out in 1926. Extra dimensions are not really outside of, you know, standard physics. To me, I don't like to have more dimensions than I need. So when people talking about 11 dimensions, whatever, I don't know. But I do know that we need one extra dimension for this energy that's out there, this ocean of energy. And we know it's there because we can measure it in the Lamb shift. Lamb won a Nobel Prize. We can measure in the Casimir effect when we put our plates together. Another Nobel Prize. Wait, did Casimir win a Nobel Prize? I'm not sure. But 1948, Casimir effect. And we can also measure it in the Ehrenhoff-Bohm effect, where we like can shoot a scalar potential through our medium. So there's something there. Let me go to one of my 0 point energy videos. I got a short one. Is this one? Let's play it. No, the mysterious. Sorry, chat. Oof. You know what? Like, that was PBS Space Time. I played the wrong one.
You'll find no mention of 0 point energy in classical mechanics. The closest thing you'll come to it in 19th century science is the concept of the ether, a hypothetical substance that pervades all of space, invented to explain how light waves could travel through a vacuum. The fact is that 0 point energy is a phenomenon exclusive to quantum mechanics, and in particular a governing rule of quantum mechanics known as the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. 0 point energy is the lowest possible energy that a quantum system can have. Unlike in classical mechanics, quantum systems constantly fluctuate in their lowest energy state as described by the uncertainty principle. One way to think of 0 point energy is the kinetic energy or vibrational motion retained by atoms and molecules even at absolute zero, when according to classical physics all motion should cease. Alternatively, think of it as the energy left behind in a volume of space after all the matter and radiation has been removed. According to quantum field theory, the universe can be thought of not as isolated particles but as continuous fluctuating fields. Matter fields, whose quanta are fermions, that is leptons and quarks, and force fields, whose quanta are bosons, such as photons and gluons. All these fields have zero-point energy. We also have some observational data on zero-point energy. The fields associated with it produce physical consequences that are measurable in the lab. One example is the so-called Lamb shift of the spectral lines of an atom. The fields slightly perturb an electron in an atom so that when it makes a transition from one state to another, it emits a photon whose frequency is shifted slightly from the normal value. Another measurable consequence of the fields associated with zero-point energy is the Casimir effect, a force that appears between two closely spaced metal plates. The Casimir force is due to radiation pressure from the zero-point energy of the background electromagnetic field. In effect, some wavelengths of the field are excluded from between the plates, thus reducing the energy density compared with that of empty space. The imbalance results in the plates being pushed together. Zero-point energy has been seen by some as representing a vast unexploited potential. If zero-point energy could be tapped, it might be of future importance to space travel, a fact that hasn't gone unnoticed by the US Air Force.
Okay, so there you heard it. There was the explanation. Like, it's unimpeachable. We know it's out there. And now we've seen it with our own eyes. We've seen negative energy. We've seen that there is this extra dimension of energy that's out there, and all these people have been saying that it's real and that it's there. Why are they saying is it related to space travel? Space travel needs negative energy because they're saying once you understand that there's this sea of energy that's out there, now you understand what the negative energy state is. It's just this. Gravity is just an induced effect of this type of action. Now it's happening at a dimensional level. That energy is all around us. The distance between the atoms is probably filled with that energy. It's not just, we call it just empty space, but of course it's not really empty. So some other examples: the ground state of a hydrogen atom at rest doesn't radiate energy, even though we know quantum mechanically it's moving. Why is there not energy coming from it? Why does the electron orbital not crash into the atom? Because it's constantly refreshing energy. It's in a balanced state. Superfluids. So why does superfluid helium-3 not freeze? Why does helium-3 become stuck in a liquid form even at absolute zero, where we think we've removed all heat from that region? It doesn't freeze because it's still getting energy at the quantum level. And that energy is a significant amount that it can overcome it becoming a solid, which is huge. So what I want to do is I want to show some... I'm going to show these are not any particular scientific papers today. A lot of people, we're kind of doing a recap. Okay. So we just got a brief understanding of zero-point energy. I'm going to throw some scientific papers at you here. Everybody asks me what scientific papers you read, which scientific papers are important, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to list some of my favorite, no particular order or anything like that, just so they come along. And for me, we got to start with Hal Puthoff. Think that Hal Puthoff is a guy that he probably deserves more credit than he's been given. And now I think people are ready to look at his work with an open viewpoint. But back in like the 80s and 70s, and he was doing remote viewing stuff, people were not open-minded enough back then. It was pretty taboo subject. And that led him into looking at quantum mechanics and aerospace. Okay, where is it? And then we're going to look at something new as well that I've got. Okay, sorry, we got to go back to the 80s. Crazy. So let's go to Ground state of a hydrogen is a 0-point fluctuation. Wait, you guys can see this, right? Okay. We don't really need to read past the... We're not going to read the whole things here today, but my God. I just had it. Now it's gone. You gotta be kidding me, man. Should be 1987. Ground state of a hydrogen is a 0-point fluctuation determined state. We show here that within stochastic electrodynamic formulation. What is this doing? Why is it trolling me, chat? Is there a stop button? Within the stochastic electrodynamic formulation and at the level of the Bohr theory, the ground state of the hydrogen atom can be predicted or precisely defined as resulting from a dynamic equilibrium between radiation emitted due to the acceleration of the electron's ground state and radiation absorbed from the 0-point fluctuations. So what he's saying there is that we are in a equilibrium state. I got it off before it did the thing to me again. Sucks. The next paper was 1989. Gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force. Right here. You know what? We're just going to go into this one. Okay, gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force. You can read, actually, it looks like you can download the whole PDF if you want right here. I'll link it in the chat after this. Okay. And gravity is a 0-point fluctuation force. Hal Puthoff again. Sakharov proposed a suggestive model in which gravity is not a separately existing fundamental force, but rather an induced effect associated with 0-point fluctuations of the vacuum, in much the same manner as the van der Waals and Casimir forces. So what he's saying here is that Sakharov, 1967-ish, 1969, he first proposed this, at least as far as we know. I mean, multiple people figure out the same stuff, but basically they were saying that this 0-point fluctuations all around us is this sea of energy that's out there, and that like increases or decreases in this are gravity. It is general relativity, but with a twist. There we go. The twist is there's this 0-point fluctuations, and this adds in a lot more energy that we're not actively seeing out there. The Casimir force is the best example of this. Because when we take those plates and put them together, we see this negative pressure differential between them. This tells us that there's something there. Again, we've proven that 0-point energy exists, and now we're saying, well, what does it do? Oh, well, it does everything we need it to do. In the spirit of this proposal, we develop a point particle 0-point fluctuation interaction model that accords and fulfills with this hypothesis. In the model, gravitational mass and its associated gravitational effects are shown to derive in a fully self-consistent way from electromagnetic 0-point fluctuation induced particle motion. And when he's saying Zitra-Buagong here, he's saying the shakiness, the fact that the vibration never stops. So you think of this ocean of energy is constantly just vibrating at these small scales. Because of its electromagnetic 0-point fluctuation underpinning, gravitational theory in this form constitutes an already unified theory. So what he's saying here is if you just add this 0-point energy in, we actually don't have to redo anything else that's out there. We just now can see more holistically the next level of general relativity, which is how do you unify it with quantum mechanics? Well, here's how. This is how you unify it. Oh, and by the way, it solves everything we need out there. So this paper breaks down how to connect gravity and 0-point energy, and does the math, Einstein's general relativity math, takes the math, changes it around, shows you that yes, we can actually explain general relativity through quantum mechanics and through the quantum mechanical equations. And that there's actually nothing left over either. Now, one more part, I'm not going to go into this much depth in the other papers, but this one, I'm going to show you guys the secret sauce in this. Even if you read it and just don't understand the equations, like the discussion, the abstract, and some parts in the middle are also are good to read, as long as it's somebody who they know what they're talking about. The basic thesis is that Sakharov's proposal that gravity is not separately existing fundamental force, but rather a residuum force derived from 0-point fluctuations of other fields in the manner of the Casimir and van der Waals. Particularizing this hypothesis to the 0-point fluctuations of the vacuum electromagnetic field, we identify the gravitational force as the van der Waals force associated with long-range radiation fields, as opposed to the usual shorter range induction fields generated by the Zitterbuergong. That was not what I wanted to read. Part I wanted to read is the part about the shielding. Okay, yeah, here we go. Okay, then he's basically saying after we've understood that the 0-point energy explains gravity, the weakness of the gravitational force is due to the fact that the coupling constant determined by this huge equation here reflects as an inverse square the high value of the 0-point fluctuation cutoff frequency. With regards to the attractive nature of this force, it's simply a reflection of the property typical of the van der Waals force in general. He's saying it just leans one way or the other. The fact that gravitational interaction is characterized by unipolar or singular can be traced to the kinetic energy basis for the mass parameter. So in here as well, I guess maybe I missed it. Oh, and there's one more part. The lack of shielding effects on gravity can also be comprehended on a rational basis. He's saying we can understand why we can't shield gravity. As understood here, this is a consequence of the fact that the 0-point fluctuation noise in general cannot be shielded, a factor which in other contexts sets a lower limit on the detectability of the electromagnetic signals. Specifically, in the case of ordinary electromagnetic shielding, macroscopic materials constitute dense boundaries that substantially alter field distributions. So he's saying there that you can alter those boundaries by making a Faraday cage, with shielding one consequence from electromagnetism. In the gravitational case modeled here, however, matter constitutes a dilute particle gas in an essentially high frequency, whatever this word means. As a result, particle 0-point fluctuation interactions have a negligible effect on the overall field distribution, while nonetheless permit particle-particle interactions. So he's saying there that we can't shield the 0-point fluctuations because when you get down to that level of tininess, even solid mass is mostly just emptiness. That's what he's saying there. It's mostly just emptiness. So to me, that's a big hint. Now, next paper I want to show. So read that, interpret it yourself however you want. Where is it? Wow. We're going to have to go to Reddit. Oh, here it is. Okay. We're not going to Reddit. Authorization required. Okay, I guess we will show this. Whatever. I was trying to find Robert Forward's 1984 paper. Which has to do with harnessing energy from the vacuum. So already human beings that were scientists, mostly in America, if not all in America, imagine other countries are trying this as well. Robert Forward showed in 1984 that we can actually harness the energy from the vacuum using the Casimir effect, using this pressure that is produced by the Casimir effect. Is that we can turn that into work. We can theoretically charge a battery. Once you've got it in the energy in battery form, you know, you can do whatever you want with it. Is there a better link to the paper? Fortunately, when I press this button, it says authorization required. Okay. Whatever. Give me one more second to see if I can find it. Here it is. Here it is. Got it. Okay. Crisis averted, chat. Thanks, ZP. Appreciate you. Extracting electrical energy from the vacuum by cohesion of charged foilated conductors. So manipulating your conductors, we can potentially just pull energy out. Any pair of conducting plates at close distances experiences an attractive Casimir force that, due to the electromagnetic zero-point fluctuations of the vacuum, a vacuum fluctuation battery can be constructed by using the Casimir force to do work on a stack of charged conducting plates. By applying a charge of the same polarity to each conducting plate, a repulsive electrostatic force will be produced that opposes the Casimir force. If the applied electrostatic force is adjusted to be always slightly less than the Casimir force, the plates will move towards each other, and the Casimir force will add energy to the electric field between the plates. The battery can be recharged by making the electrical forces slightly stronger than the Casimir force to re-expand the foilated conductor. So what we're talking about here is now manipulating the Casimir effect. Why is this paper so important? Guys, I'm giving you this is the foundational secret sauce. Because Robert Forward's saying we can theoretically manipulate this effect. We can use it to charge a battery. We can increase the voltage running through it, and we can actually manipulate the direction of it. We can make a reverse Casimir effect, where if we stack the charge high enough, it overcomes the Casimir force, and now it becomes repulsive. And now you're going, okay, well, wait, am I just manipulating gravity now? And if you look at what we were looking at in the first paper, you go, in a sense, yeah. It kind of makes sense now that once you say, oh, well, gravity is a 0-point fluctuation effect because of this sea of energy that we're in. Well, if I want to manipulate an area of that sea of energy, I want to make some cohesive currents running through it. I want to take away all the randomness, and I want there to be order. And I'm going to create order. Okay, well, make two charged plates and make them extremely powerfully charged. Now don't stand between them. Right? Okay. So we'll add that on there. Which brings me my next paper I'm going to go to, which is dynamic Casimir effect paper. Yeah, this is the one. Oh, which one? I think we'll look at this one. I'm not sure if this is my favorite one, but dynamic Casimir effect in general started being studied. So Dadanov, this brief description of some recent advancement in the theory of the dynamic Casimir effect, mainly the connection with the experiment which is under preparation at the University of Padua. This first paper is devoted to the theory of quantum dampened oscillator with arbitrary time dependence of the frequency and dampening coefficient. New results from the mean number. This is actually not what I want, I don't think. Okay, well, let's just read. The so-called dynamic Casimir effect is the generation of photons from the vacuum due to the motion of uncharged boundaries. was the subject of numerous theoretical studies for almost 40 years. An extensive list of publications can be found in review. Okay. Wanted to mark out the best papers basically here to excite true surface vibrations of a cavity wall in the gigahertz band and to use a beam of atoms passing through the cavity as a detector. So they proposed several different ideas of doing it. Okay, this isn't what I want. Let me look at this one. This is the one. Okay. One of the most surprising predictions of modern quantum field theory is the vacuum of space is not empty. Okay, this is the one. This is the one we wanted. I'm just hesitant to put a Nature article on here. So we'll go Wilson, 2011. Okay. So some of this stuff is new, but people in the Black projects have known all about these papers. Am I still showing the wrong paper? Let me see. Oh, yeah, hold on. Good. I'm glad I didn't show you the other paper. I was embarrassed of that one. Here you go. Okay, I found the right dynamic Casimir effect paper. One of the most surprising predictions is that the vacuum of space is not actually empty. In fact, the vacuum theory predicts that it teems with virtual particles flittering in and out of existence. This is accepted by mainstream physics. I added that part. Although initially a curiosity, has quickly realized that these vacuum fluctuations had measurable consequences. For instance, producing the Lamb shift of atomic spectra and modifying the magnetic moment of the electron. This type of renormalization due to vacuum fluctuations is now central to our understanding of nature. So this renormalization, this is like that same concept of if you jump on the trampoline, it's going to bounce back. This is what's happening with this energy. Because now we're realizing, oh, we can interact with the negative energy in ways that are a little bit different than interacting with the positive energy. However, these effects provide indirect evidence for the existence of vacuum fluctuations. From early on, it was discussed whether or not it might be possible to directly observe the virtual particles that compose the quantum vacuum. So now do you get where this is going? Like we're now figuring out, okay, if there's this quantum vacuum, can we see these little particles shooting into existence all the time? Can we see the matrix? "40 years ago, it was suggested that a mirror undergoing relativistic motion could convert virtual photons into directly observable real photons." I mean, to me, this is just pulling energy out of the ether. How else do you describe that? A mirror undergoing relative motion, spinning mirror, could convert virtual photons, stuff that's just in the quantum vacuum, in the ether, directly to real observable photons. If there's any big brains out there that want to debunk me, start here. The dynamic Casimir effect, how do you square this if you are a mainstream physicist? That this is an effect where we can pull energy out of nowhere, out of the ether, just by spinning a mirror. The phenomenon, later termed the dynamic Casimir effect, has not been demonstrated previously. Here we observe the dynamic Casimir effect in a superconducting circuit consisting of a coplanar transmission line with tunable electric length. The rate of change of the electric length can be very fast, by a substantial fraction of the speed of light, by modulating the inductance of the superconducting quantum interference device at high frequencies. In addition to observing the creation of real photons, we detect two-mode squeezing in the emitted radiation, which is a signature of the quantum character of the generation process. Wow. Wow. That paper is... I didn't copy the right one. That is wild. Because they're saying the dynamic Casimir effect has been discussed, but we never really had the material science to prove that it's actually legit using appropriate, scientific processes. And here they figured out, okay, well, we can just manipulate superconductive circuitry and with a tunable electric length. So they're talking about manipulating the frequencies here, and modulating the inductance. So this is when you use that scale. I don't remember what it's called. It's got kind of a weird name, the circle scale, with your inductance. So you can modulate this. So it's like taking your dial on your radio and changing the dial until you get to the until you get to the right frequency, and then all of a sudden, boom, lights shooting out of it. You're seeing like real photons come out of nowhere. Okay. So this is why when I talk about the dynamic Casimir effect, like we've got real evidentiary proof that 0-point fluctuations exist. We've got proof that we can manipulate them right here. We got proof that we can manipulate them. Now let's go to, let's go back to one or two more Puthoff papers. These are not, we're not going to read the whole thing here. We're just kind of skip over it. The new Rosetta Stone in Physics, Quantum Fluctuations of Empty Space, 1991. Not wrong. What a crazy thing to write this paper. Like, you have to know. To write this paper, like, bro, quantum fluctuations, we figured it out. This explains everything. Like, look at all his papers. Like, that they're all just about the same things. He knows. Somebody tried to dunk on him in 1991. Somebody tried to dunk, and he just came in with a hard block. And he was like, nope, reply to your comment about thought that I didn't do the math right. And he's saying the correction results in a better match between theory and observation, therefore strengthening the original argument that the 0-point fields are dynamically generated in the quantum vacuum. Basically saying, you're a bitch. You got bitched on. Don't try to come at me again. Nobody ever did. Nobody ever did after that. Let me see. Oh, extracting energy and heat from the vacuum. Okay. So this paper with Cole here, we are going to click on this one, although I'm just going to explain it. This one says that the laws of thermodynamics are not violated through the dynamic Casimir effect or the Casimir effect in general. So a lot of people start to become douchebags, and they're all, oh, my laws of thermodynamics getting violated. But you're like, no, it's not, because there's this huge sea of energy that's out there. And this huge sea of energy says that we are still conserving energy because we're never really using energy at all. It's not working the way that people think, where it's just E equals MC squared. So we're losing a little bit of mass and we're creating energy off of it like that. Technically, the physics still applies, but it's a little bit more complicated. We're in a sea of energy all the time. So we can manipulate this sea of energy the same way we can manipulate the sea of light that hits us or the wind that hits us. But we have to do so on an extremely small scale. We have to interact with it on the quantum scale. The Casimir force might be the only way we know of right now to interact with it. But that's enough. That's enough. That's a start. So even without metamaterials, like, we don't need... People try to say, oh, you need metamaterials. No, we don't need metamaterials for this. Like, we can manipulate these interactions with just basic materials. Now, metamaterials probably going to help out in the long run, because if you really boil this down, it's about changing your medium to be completely homogeneous, or like completely, homogeneous. You want everything to be the same. Hopefully I'm using that term correctly. You want everything to be the same. Okay. Now, the other paper, I think, was right after that with Heish. Yeah, here it is. Inertia as a 0-point Lorentz force. So now Puthoff gets involved with Ruda and Heish here. And Heish then gets involved with Garrett Model. And this is right before these guys go also to, at least Harold Puthoff, maybe these other guys, they go work at the NASA Breakthrough Physics Propulsion research for like 6 years after this too. So this paper, inertia is the 0 point. Now they're saying, hey, we can manipulate gravity, but we can also manipulate inertia. And then what they're basically saying is that, okay, we've got it figured out. 0 point fluctuations explain everything. Explains mass, explains inertia, explains gravity, explains dark energy, dark matter. Everything we've struggled to understand. Doesn't change anything about what we observe. Isn't that the best possible proof that you could ask? Now, I want to shout out, there's 2 papers. I'm going to play actually the rest of this video. I don't know what's going to happen here. Let's see.
Quest for proposals by the Air Force Rocket Propulsion Laboratory in 1986 read, "Bold new non-conventional propulsion concepts are solicited. The specific areas in which AFRPL is interested include esoteric energy sources for propulsion, including the zero-point quantum dynamic energy of vacuum space." That all sounds very exciting, but there are still huge gaps in both our theoretical and observational knowledge of this subject. Some theorists note.
There you go. It says right there, Feynman and Wheeler derived extremely high values for the 0 point fluctuation force, seemingly at odds with observation. This is one of the biggest areas, guys. If you're a researcher out there, we need the proof, and it might be out there already. It might be as simple as just Googling it, that the vacuum catastrophe can be resolved with this massive amount of energy. Because quantum mechanics says this energy is like 10 to the 1 over 100 orders of magnitude, 100 zeros, infinite, fundamentally. I think I read an argument that claimed that there already is an infinite that general physics just like normalizes or something. So maybe there's an answer out there.
Notably, Richard Feynman and John Wheeler have obtained extremely large values for the 0 point energy of the vacuum, leading to optimism that it could serve as an almost unlimited future source of energy. But the only direct observational evidence we have for it are very subtle effects such as those already mentioned, the Lamb shift and the Casimir effect. Until recently, cosmologists had no reason to think that 0 point energy played any significant role in the evolution of the universe as a whole. The only significant force at work appeared to be gravity. To explain why 0 point energy appeared to play no great role on a cosmic scale, some theorists propose that the fermion field has a negative 0 point energy, while the boson field has positive 0 point energy, so that these contributions cancel each other out. That would be true if supersymmetry were an exact symmetry of nature, but experiments like those at the Large Hadron Collider have so far found no evidence to support it. What's more, it's known that if supersymmetry is valid at all, it's at most a broken symmetry, only true at very high energies. No one has been able to show a theory where 0 point cancellations occur in the low energy universe we see around us today. But then came a dramatic new development in 1998 with the startling discovery that not only is the universe expanding, but the rate of its expansion is increasing. Evidently there's some other phenomenon at work in opposition to gravity that's causing the expansion of the universe to accelerate. That phenomenon has been named dark energy. We still don't know what it is, but among the various ideas put forward is that dark energy is none other than the energy inherent in empty space, 0 point energy.
It was always 0 point energy all around. Always was, chat, meme. Always was 0 point energy all along. People just got fooled. Haha, ripped the thing off. It was 0-point energy. Dark energy is explained by 0-point energy. 0-point energy, what we're trying to reconcile is 0-point energy must be offsetting itself at the quantum level. And we know that. That's why we call them the virtual particles, because we don't see them, but they're constantly annihilating one another. This is why we don't see this huge amount, we don't see this massive amount of energy that's out there. Just at a level that's unperceivable to us on this extra dimension that Kaluza-Klein figured out. We're going to call it our fifth dimension. But we can see the interactions in this fifth dimension with the lamp shift, which is why we know it must be out there. Now, Robert Forward showed that we can interact with it, and we can actually theoretically charge a battery with it. We can pull energy out of it. So this paper here, this is Tom Bearden on extracting electromagnetic energy from the vacuum. I had to get Bearden involved in this. Generators and batteries do not furnish any of their inertial energy due to their electrical external circuit, but only dissipate it internally to perform work on their own internal charges to form a source dipole. Once formed, the dipole's broken symmetry extracts observable energy from the virtual particle exchange between the dipole charges and the active vacuum. There you go. Tom Bearden's given us the answer right there. Tom Bearden's saying that all that's happening is that you create this asymmetry of your charges. And the moment you connect it to a circuit, you've created your dipole, your broken symmetry. And what's happening is that virtual particles are coming out of the ether and they are being generated in our observable reality. The extracted observable energy is re-radiated as the energy flow through all space surrounding the external circuit. Power doesn't flow through wires. The tiny pointing fraction, the pointing vector, intercepted by the surface charges enters the circuit to power it, while the huge non-intercepted heavy side fraction misses the circuit and is wasted. So electrical loads are powered by energy extracted from the vacuum, not by chemical energy in the battery or shaft energy input to the generator. Any electromagnetic system may be asymptomatically regauged freely, changing the energy of the system by changing its potential. By placing the source dipole in a closed current loop with external loads and losses, half the free excitation energy then discharged by the circuit destroys the source dipole, while half powers the loads and the losses. So what he's saying there too is that half the energy is being used to destroy the dipole. This becomes significant because when you look at the design of the Holcomb generator, they argue that they don't have the energy destroying their dipoles. That's how they're able to do it. So they're basically conjuring energy, manifesting energy in different ways than just a simple spinning a generator shaft. He says this applies Lorentz symmetrical regauging so that the additional internal generator battery energy must be made available to dissipate on the internal charges to reform the dipole. Such self-crippling electromagnetic power systems exhibit coefficient of performance less than 1 by definition, basically, he's saying. He's saying, of course, they can only receive coefficient of performance less than 1 because your method of extracting energy is limited. Requirements for coefficient of performance greater than 1 electromagnetic systems are given as recognized examples of such processes. We also propose the ubiquitous, unaccounted heaviside energy as the dark matter gravitational energy long sought by astrophysicists. He's telling you right there that 0-point energy is the answer. And when it comes to power, it's a matter of where is energy even coming from? It's such a simple question. which is why it's so easy to argue with people who think that, oh, this is just crazy or whatever. Like, no, I always spinning a generator is the only way to produce energy. You just say, where do you think the energy is coming from? Where do you think the energy is coming from for this light right here? Do you think it's beaming at the speed of light from the power plant to your house? That's not what's happening at all. It's happening through the fields, and those fields are passing through empty space. This is the same reason why when you attach a current measure device, it doesn't even have to be touching the circuit. It can already measure the current because the power is actually flowing through fields and empty space. It has a relationship to the wires because the wires are producing the flow of electrons, which creates the fields for the Poynting vector, the right-hand rule. It's wild. Okay, let's hear it from in his own words.
The generator powered the external circuit. It doesn't. It does not power it at all. All it does is we twist the crank on the generator, the shaft, to turn the shaft, and that forms a magnetic field inside the generator, and that energy in that magnetic field dissipates itself upon the internal charges to force the positive charges in one direction and negative charges in the other and make that dipole, and that's all the generator does. It doesn't add 1 watt to the power line. All the coal, all the oil, all the dams ever built, all the nuclear fuel rods ever consumed, never added 1 single watt to the power line. All they did was keep rebuilding the dipole that we have designed a silly circuit to destroy faster than we can power the loads.
There you go. In his own words. So that is my paper number 6, Extracting Energy from the Vacuum by Tom Bearden. And why is it so important? That's one where you can read that. Anybody can understand that. Anybody can understand that. I can understand that. Where a generator is just one mechanism to extract energy. The root cause is that we're creating a spinning, we're making a spinning copper wire through a magnetic field. That's creating this dipole, this asymmetry of the charges from one side to the other. It's a battery, a capacitor. And then energy flows. So then why are we spinning a generator? Oh, because a guy named Nikola Tesla over 100 years ago told us that's what we should do, because we just copied what he did. And we never thought like, should we try to understand like more about energy? Nah, this is good enough forever. Just keep spinning generators forever. There's actually a Rick and Morty episode that's just literally about this, where somebody creates a tiny mini-verse and they go inside and all these people are doing is like jumping on like doing some kind of fitness equipment. And they don't know why they're doing it. That's like what we're doing with generators. Just spinning a generator without thinking like, what is this actually doing? And that brings us to our next guest in spirit, Ken Shoulders. So Ken Shoulders, his work was next level. He got an apology from Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman, he got an apology from Richard Feynman. And Julian Schwinger got on board with cold fusion and left the American Physical Society, like the most prestigious physics academic community that's out there. Julian Schwinger left it because they wouldn't listen to his cold fusion research. And then Richard Feynman's apologizing to Ken Shoulders. Ken Shoulders was looking into balls of plasma, which now we just think of as fusion. But cold fusion is this concept of, well, we've got this 0-point energy. Now we're thinking of the world in much more realistic terms. And we're going, okay, let's think about energy production in a smarter way. Let's not just think about it in terms of spinning a generator anymore, smashing things together. What if we can interact with the medium itself. We can change gravity itself. If we can change gravity itself, then we can make a little star. We can make a little star. We'll probably do other stuff as well, but we can at least make a little star. And Ken Shoulders then found out about exotic vacuum objects. That's what he called it. Exotic vacuum objects, EVOs. Why? Because when he was researching plasma, Ken Shoulders found out that this plasma starts to self-organize. Starts to self-organize. And weirdly, he's seeing mass reduction and weight reduction effects when he does this. And immediately begins to see the implications for propulsion, space propulsion as well. Yeah, he talks about two different kinds of EVs, the black and the white ones, which I don't fully understand. You have to keep in mind that a lot of these people are on the forefront of their sciences. There aren't even terms for some of the concepts. The most important concept, though, is the EVs are charges of electrons that are clustering together. Now, if you just think about the universe in a basic sense of a sheet of energy that we're walking through at all times, you realize that if you just clustered some electrons together, what have you done? You've created your dipole. You've created your dipole, and now you're going to have a circuit. You're going to have energy flowing. If the electrons are naturally clumped together, that's the ideal condition that we would want for what Tom Bearden was just talking about. Because now we have a situation where our dipole is not collapsing. In fact, if it's sustained, now we have sustained energy just being produced. Free energy. You've created a device now just manipulating gravitational forces in that region where you've got a coherent shape that can form and be sustaining and just sitting up there in a equilibrium itself. And so this is where Ken Shoulders' work, permittivity transitions. Okay. By all the accounts I read, Ken Shoulders seems like he was a good guy. I think he understood the implications of what he discovered. It was way beyond what people expected. And with these charge clusters, him figuring this out, I think he figured out something very potentially ancient. But these natural properties that he discovered in plasma, they explain cold fusion. They explain how we could produce fusion at low temperatures. Because we're not trying to jam stuff together anymore. Now we're just pulling a little bit of energy out of space-time and things naturally just roll into one another. So we can manipulate negative energy and maybe even just break down elements as well, like with water. H2O falls apart, just becomes hydrogen and oxygen. So these ideas open the door right away to this idea of cold fusion becoming much more feasible. And then the last thing, I'm gonna go weird with it for a second. What if cold fusion, what if these balls of coherent energy, exotic vacuum objects, that Ken Shoulders called exotic vacuum objects because he believed they were cohering energy from the vacuum. That's why he called them vacuum objects, exotic vacuum objects. What if these are like the most basic form of advanced technology? Like any it's like discovering fire. It's like you discover fire, you discover EVOs. When you reach a certain level, you realize, oh, we can make these balls of plasma that are coherent. And once you've got your little Jarvis, now you've got more than one little Jarvis. And when you realize, oh, I've got 3 Jarvises that can just float freely around and ignore gravity. I start to wonder, are they conscious? Do they have their own being in there, permanently connected to the energy? What if they are UFO fuel? What if they are, what if any civilization that figures these out? Now you've just skyrocketed up the Kardashev scale up to like type 2 civilization. Just overnight. Unlimited free energy from your Jarvis. Your Jarvises can squeeze together and manipulate the Casimir effect and offset it with the Coulomb repulsion and create a wormhole. You figured out quantum mechanics now at the macroscopic level. Yeah, it's a technological singularity. Hello, somebody said devil's advocate, but they didn't say what. But welcome everybody who's checking out the stream tonight. So here's what Ken Shoulders had to say. Then we're going to add a little Salvatore Pius as well. Highly organized micron-sized clusters of electrons, or EVs, having soliton behavior. Soliton waves have like a focused wave pattern behavior, like coherent wave pattern, with electron populations on the order of Avogadro's number, which is it 10 to the 25, 10 to the 23? It's a big number of electrons, are represented as the necessary function for modifying the permittivity of space in a downward direction, reducing the permittivity of space-time. So what we're realizing here too now is we're realizing this is how you actually manipulate the vacuum. So we know there's energy out there. How do we manipulate the vacuum? How do we interact with that fabric of reality? Here's one answer. If you reduce the permittivity of space, reduce the energy out of there, you're reducing the refractive index as well. If you're reducing the refractive index, then when light shines through it, the speed of light increases. So right away, he started realizing this, and he's like, oh, crap. When you now look at all the math, like, this works, but things get super weird. Look at all these things that start to happen. The state of existence for this entity reduces its expressed charge by many orders of magnitude below that calculated for the same number and volume of uncontained electrons. The EV is shown to exist in at least two distinct modes of charge masking, with one of them, the black EV, being virtually undetectable using sensitive methods. A form of inertial propulsion will be discussed that arises from the internal inertial retification effects available by modulating the state of the EV, thereby the permittivity of space and concomitant inertia or effective mass of moving material through space. So he's saying there we can change the mass of the EV itself. So he's already saying we can already manipulate these balls of plasma. This is what year was this? I think this is 2001. 2001. This is 20 years ago. It'll be shown that the same type of permittivity change through EV modulation can achieve a unidirectional current flow, and that this gives rise to methods for generating monopole effects and vector potentials useful for communication outside the usual current loop generating them. Now, I could be wrong here, but my layman's interpretation here says that he's saying when we change the permittivity of space like this, we're changing gravity, we're manipulating space-time. This is producing a current flow automatically because of this asymmetry. Current's what kills you, not the voltage. The current does. Creates a unidirectional current flow that gives rise to magnetic monopoles. Creates a magnetic monopole because it's tapped into the ether. And once he saw this, Ken Shoulders knew right away that there was an ether. The moment you're seeing a drain, like what it would have looked like observationally, is you're seeing a drain, a vortex, just in space-time. You're going, wait, why am I seeing a space-time vortex? And you're going, oh, that's a monopole. I'm seeing a monopole effect because of this permittivity change in the region of the plasma around it. Consideration will be given to a form of pseudoparticle entanglement arising from the tightly packed pseudo-quantized coupling between the EV structures. Complex organisms are discussed, composed entirely of EV structures that are self-formed at electronic rates without either mechanical or chemical methods. Jesus Christ. I mean, right there, he's saying that EVs could be alive. They have everything they need to be alive. They don't even have biological function. This starts to bring up some, I don't even know if I want to go there, right? But if you're somebody who's into the spiritual aspect, holy crap. Stock for angels being the explanation for non-human intelligence is going through the roof. You know, or jinn or whatever people say, all those things. Some speculations will be made on the benefits of operating such complex entities in regions of greatly reduced permittivity. A condensed matter dissolution technique will be shown that is capable of the cold disassociation of refractory material into a low viscosity fluid. The root process for energy conversion methods resembling cold fusion are reviewed and showed to likely spring from the same EV technology capable of producing a modified space permittivity. I mean, there you go, chat. Direct connection between Ken's shoulders and EVs, exotic vacuum objects, and cold fusion. I can't believe we're just literally... We're showing that cold fusion's real. We're just showing the cold fusion's actually real. And it just got covered up because humanity's retards. Like, we're just a bunch of retards. There's not a better... We're primitives. We're primitives. Like, we're so primitive that when somebody came and showed us cold fusion, we just attacked them. Heretic! Heretic, you go against the orthodoxy. Consideration will be given to experimental methods for testing effects on time at greatly reduced levels of permittivity. So he's also realizing time dilation as well. So this was like 2001, I think this paper. 2001. So Ken's shoulders realized right away. Imagine being a smart enough guy where you realize this self-coherence of this plasma. And you realize, shit, those people that found cold fusion, they saw these effects. You realize, holy shit, those people saw cold fusion. They saw these effects. This is what they were seeing. And you're like, oh, by the way, this is definitely a source of free energy. Notice they don't write that right in their paper, but Ken's shoulders knew that we're achieving unidirectional current flow. When he's writing unidirectional current flow right here, he's like, we're pulling energy out of the ether. That's what these things are doing. And why did people ignore him? Well, because it wasn't on mainstream news. You know, people didn't report it. And it's stuff that a lot of it's probably in black projects. And if it's out here in the public world, it was probably in the black project world for decades before that. He left a micro vacuum computer chip company to study this, guys. This guy was like the father of microelectronics. He was developing stuff with microelectronics that didn't even exist before he was developing it. Ken Shoulders was. So Ken Shoulders is not a joke at all. Thank you very much for this donation, Death Proof Bum 01. Do you think that the ancients who moved thousands of tons of stone blocks in Peru, Egypt, Stonehenge learned of zero-point energy to move them? I'm glad you asked. I think it could be one answer, could be one resolution. I'm not convinced that you just add a bunch of slaves. That doesn't seem like a very smart engineering answer. No, just more slaves to get that rock up there. Like, doesn't seem like any number of slaves is going to make that a feasible way to do it. What I will say is that the more you look into this, if it is true that these balls of plasma are some phenomenon that is easy to recreate, potentially very easy to recreate, then I do think there's this ability to just skip right up the technological scale. Like you don't just, it's not a linear growth. Like you discover these balls of plasma and then, okay, now you're God tier. Not really, obviously. I don't mean to be blasphemous there, but you've achieved levels of technological civilization that now puts you infinitely over above anybody else that doesn't also have that technology. So yeah, I think it's possible that we forgot. Maybe we forgot for a reason. That's the hardest part. What if we forgot this technology because we wanted to forget? Because we don't want to keep wiping ourselves out? Because we're idiots. We're monkeys. We're cavemen. And we're just going to destroy ourselves. Sorry, it's true. Okay. Ken Shoulders, Primitivity Transitions. That's a good one. Sal Paez. I don't know if I have the Sal Paez ones. Sure. I think this is a paper here. Okay, here we go. Okay, Sal Paez, we're gonna, you know what? This is not the paper that I would have talked about. Yeah, no problem, brother. Thanks for the donation. This is not the paper I would have talked about a year ago, but now it's the paper that I think is the most important one. And I think Sal would laugh and also probably agree if he heard me say that. The high energy electromagnetic field generator patent. Because this is the one that is getting us to the levels of the Schwinger limit, where Julian Schwinger said, we're going to start pulling photons from the ether. I think these guys like Paez and some other engineers realize, okay, we've got dynamic Casimir effect. We've got the 0 point energy that's out there. What happens when we push the limit? Oh, Julian Schwinger, famous physicist, said when we get to this certain level, space-time becomes nonlinear. And Eli Prigogine said that we can have this negative entropy can occur. Disorder can become orderly. The thoughts of entropy always increasing. Eli Prigogine says, no, if you go extremely far away from equilibrium, you can basically have a slingshot effect happen where now you're going to have this reversal wave. So for Salvatore Paez's high energy electromagnetic field generator, the original concept described is named the high energy electromagnetic field generator. This concept governing physics entails the coupling of the graviton, high frequency spin, vibration, high frequency abrupt pulsations and harmonic oscillations, and possible curvilinear translation of electrically charged systems. If we couple the system's high frequency of rotation, this is very high, 100,000 RPMs, with high vibration, abrupt pulsations or harmonic oscillations. Imagine your swing. Frequencies in the range of 10 to the 9 to 10 to the 18 hertz, we can obtain electromagnetic field intensities in the range of 10 to the 24 to 10 to the 28 watts per meter squared. These extremely high electromagnetic field intensity values emphasize the novelty of this concept, especially suited for the design of energy generation machinery with output levels much higher than those currently achievable. Utilization of such high power sources for space power and propulsion generation as it pertains to reduction in spacecraft's inertial mass as a direct result of local vacuum polarization is an important application of the described theoretical concept. So what are we saying here? Also here we can see quantum vacuum plasma. Look at all these key words he put in here. This is basically the Navy's admission that 0-point energy is correct. If mainstream academia wasn't so goddamn clown shoes, we would already have 0-point energy. This is the Navy saying, yes, 0-point energy is legit. We've got patents for it that are legit patents that we know are real. This guy's literally saying 0-point energy is the answer. Okay. So we're going to add this one on there. Although, honestly, the better one that I think we'll go with is I think the high frequency gravitational wave. Is it field generator? High frequency gravitational wave generator. This one, here it is. This one's my favorite one. Because in this one, he talks about being able to amplify the energy. And he basically says that, we can destroy a planet with this. In the ways it's not directly saying that. I'll link both of them. And it says controlled motion of charged matter under rapid acceleration transients may enable macroscopic quantum coherence, namely possible quantum mechanical behavior of macroscopic objects. I mean, right here, he's basically saying right here, you can teleport objects. We can teleport objects. That's what he's saying right here. Like, this is literally what he means when he's saying this. We can teleport something. We can achieve macroscopic quantum coherence. Well, we can just tap into the root cause, the root structure of the matrix, of the rules. Once we understand that we're in this energy, field of energy, then we see that we are most likely in a holographic situation. So now it's just a matter of interacting with the hologram the right way. And yeah, we can do stuff that we didn't think we were able to pull off before. Let's do a few more papers. Okay, well, let's bump it up a little bit. Let's go to let's get Eric Davis involved in here. Okay, teleportation physics study is the next one. I guess it didn't share. Okay, so then we found teleportation physics study, which if you don't really know what this is all about, this is 2004. And the Air Force Research Lab was commissioning this paper to Eric W. Davis, who's the #1 scientist for Hal Puthoff. These guys are 1000% connected to some advanced technology. No question, no doubt. You don't write a teleportation physics paper that's, 70 pages long? How long is it? 62 pages. Look at how many references, too. He was just flexing with the references. He's like, if you don't believe me, I've got 160, 200, how many references? 253 references. I couldn't even list off 253 papers. 253 references. John Archibald Wheeler, like you're going to see everybody that you could recognize. Visser here is all about wormholes. I wonder if he has Winterberg listed. No? Okay. Sakharov, I'm sure. No. He's got Puthoff listed several times here. Just interesting to see who they've got listed. Morris. Is that Gunter Nimitz? Yeah, Gunter Nimitz. superluminal signal velocities. So he's got Gunter Nimitz even listed in this paper as well, who showed that we potentially can have faster than light communication. Faster than light communication becomes possible with this idea of the ether as well, because the speed of light now isn't necessarily the limit anymore. Okay. So in this paper, he breaks down the different kinds of teleportation, starting with sci-fi teleportation, and which is, you know, all your elements get disembodied and then you get recreated somewhere else. That's not how real teleportation works. Sci-fi teleportation, disembodiment, no. Teleportation, psychic teleportation, is the conveyance of persons or inanimate objects by psychic means. Now, this one seems crazy, but actually there's some basis for this. Because if you look at the universe as a hologram, then now this becomes possible. Teleportation, engineering the vacuum or space-time metric. This is manipulating the medium itself. We call this VM teleportation. This is the real one, the VM teleportation. Oh, quantum entanglement is actually the legit one. Disembodied transport of quantum state of a system and its collection of actions across another system. So there we go. So anyway, we're not going to read through all this, but I just wanted to point out that there's this 68-page paper, whatever it is, 62-page paper, all on the different types of teleportation by Eric Davis, who's probably the #1 scientist in the world on wormholes and warp drives, because he's seen it. He's seen it. Frank Mead always comes up over and over again as well. Okay. He also has another one called Ball Lightning Physics Study. Oh, Justin, thank you very much. What consciousness-related questions will you ask Paez? I probably won't ask him any. The only thing I'll come close to asking about consciousness is if he thinks the orbs are alive, but I already kind of know he does. So I'll leave those for Jay from Project Unity is talking to Paez. So if you're interested in consciousness related questions, hopefully Jay asks all those questions so I don't have to. Mine's going to be straight up. We're just going to get disclosure. I'm just going to get the answers I need to understand what's going on with this technology, why we're hiding it, how long we've had it. If his patents are, I want to prove his patents are real. If we prove his patents are real, then game over. We win. Right? If Salvatore Pais' patents are real, it's all real. Simple. We want Fui Wambo win. So here's the ball lightning physics study as well. Eric Davis was busy in 2004, or maybe it was 2002. Ball lightning study. No one knew what this was all about. They called it ball lightning because they were being coy. But what they were really researching here was plasmoids. Electromagnetic vortex plasmoids generated by micro discharge devices and sustained by quantum vacuum energy. I'm going to read the last sentence here. Yeah, wait, why is this? This is redacted. 3 alternative ball lightning concepts similar to axially symmetric, force-free, time harmonic plasmoids were identified and evaluated for their experimental potential and are described in the report in detail as proposed experiments. The first new concept is the atmospheric maser caviton. So basically, you're making a cavitation effect in the sky. That's what we think is happening. The second concept is based on electromagnetic vortex. Yeah, okay. And the third concept is classified, is a something program the Air Force funded in the 50s and the 60s. Huh. So you read this and you're like, okay, obviously we've got balls of plasma. Like the way Eric Davis is talking about it here is not speculative. He knows for a fact. Frank Mead again. think they probably wanted to understand how these weapons worked. Huh, there's a third one not listed. There's a third type not listed. I don't know. Maybe his wife blocked me. Who knows, guys? It doesn't matter. Like those guys they're never gonna talk about the science with you. Like they're never gonna give you disclosure. So it doesn't really matter because the more time that goes on that these UFO people, like the more people are gonna realize how clown shoes they are. We're never gonna achieve disclosure by people coming out and telling the stories that they know or whatever. No, like we need actual disclosure through us learning how it works and us realizing that there's technology beyond our comprehension. Okay. So that was teleportation physics study, ball lightning study. Now this brings us to the DIRDs, guys. How do they control the plasma? All they need to do is tell it what direction to go. I mean, that's trivial. Honestly, you just have some kind of device inside of it, and it can just change the vector of the geodesic path that they're making. But also supercomputers, very powerful supercomputers is another mechanism that they can do that with. Maybe we'll skip over and watch a video clip real quick. See what I've got about Eric Davis.
Space-time thing where you talked about contracting space in front of a ship and then having it travel at warp speed. That has to do with this background fluctuation.
That's right, having change in the density, as we say, changing the polarizability of the vacuum is another way of looking at it.
So you're accelerating through the vacuum, right? Because when you're saying you're accelerating within this quantum fluctuation, it has an effect on that background field.
That is certainly the case, because it's essentially pushing aside the vacuum fluctuation to some degree, and that's what's causing the resistance that we call inertia.
But how would you actually contract space-time to do that? I mean, what effect could you put out there to have that?
Well, we know from switching over the general relativity side of it that you can look at the equations, whether you're using standard general relativity or some of the other approaches to general relativistic type effects, and very strong fields, strong masses. I mean, the mass of the Earth affects the space around it, which, thinking in terms of zero-point energy, is affecting the distribution of zero-point energy.
So if you go to that equation, F equals ma, where the mass times the acceleration equals the force, if you create a force, you can generate a mass that would have an effect on space.
We might generate a force that would move a mass, start to accelerate it. Or, I mean, what you'd really like to do is just scoop out the energy in front of us, and the energy behind us would just shoot us forward. So,
and that's possible. That's not just a Star Trek concept, but you've seen.
No, we know. I mean, small effects, all of general relativity, for example, is based on these principles, and we can calculate. Well, gee, if only we had so much energy,
right?
And then we could make this big effect. We could power a spaceship and so on. It's just that we don't have the engineering tools to do it right now. And frankly, those of us who are working on it think there's still something missing in the theory, because it's so hard to do. We don't see that it could ever really be done, and yet.
So he was saying as well as it was very difficult to pull off, but very clearly saying that zero-point energy is the answer. For warp drives, pull the zero-point energy out in front of you, and you're going to get pulled forward. There's just going to be a reaction. You're going to have this thrust effect. Let's see here. What I want to show this. Okay. So this paper here is Concepts for Extracting Energy from the Quantum Vacuum. This is one of the DIRDs. I believe it was written by Eric Davis. And it's got basically the same name as the paper by Tom Bearden. The Tom Bearden abstract I read earlier on this stream has basically the exact same name as this. 2010. This one was written by Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff. Tunable Casimir effect. The ability to tune the Casimir effect. That's very interesting. 0-point fluctuation energy extraction by ground state energy reduction. This is where he's saying that this is Casimir cavity right here. So it's funny, I can just tell by reading this. He's talking about the Casimir cavity effect right here, tunable Casimir effect, voltage fluctuations in coils induced by 0-point fluctuation at high frequency. Where's the part about the plasma? Squeezed quantum vacuum, Dirac vacuum decay, magnetically induced. Well, here we go. Page 17 through 22. Oh, EV phenomenon. That's what he means right here. So actually right here, guys, do you know what they're talking about? EV phenomenon? They're talking about Ken's shoulders. So they thought Ken's shoulders work was so significant that one of the experiments they selected was plasmas. They selected the EVOs right here. 17. This is the EVOs on this paper from 2010. So let's go check that page out. 17. And they're up here on the page before this, they're mentioning Robert Forward, the paper that I showed earlier today. That's not a coincidence, because Robert Forward was trying to figure out how to make a permanent Casimir effect that you wouldn't have to pull the plates apart. EV phenomenon. Oh, wow. Hello. Fall Pots, can you share your Discord server? Sure. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Here we go. Okay, there you go. So Shoulders developed an experimental program to explore the physics of microscopic plasma vortices, aka force-free plasmoids, which are thought to be a form of ball lightning. This study was motivated by early experimental works of Wells at Princeton University Plasma Physics Laboratory, Bostic and Nardi at the Stevens Institute of Technology, and their collaborators. Shoulders became interested in the possibility of stable, quantized, force-free structures that could be taken apart by some process to yield a net energy gain for power generation. There was observations of a strange electron concentrations that called vortex filaments that formed in an electron beam made by plasma focus or relativistic electron beam machines, which exhibited electron concentrations that appeared to violate the space charge law. Furthermore, Nardi observed that the vortex filaments were strikingly exposed materials, for example, metals, dielectrics, ceramics, glass, boring smooth channels straight through them, and sometimes exploding with such large force that they created impact craters or holes in the materials. They're talking about low energy nuclear reactions, and they're talking about now like Bob Greenier's work. This discovery inspired Shoulders to consider vortex filaments as a potential new source of energy, and hence he named them electromagnetic vortices, or EVs. However, Given that he could not experimentally verify the vortex nature of the phenomenon, he later defined EV to mean electrum validum, roughly translated to strong electron. Now, this picture here, you're going to see a lot. This is very similar to, I was going to say Casimir effect, but maybe I'm wrong on this. Oh, this is from the Sapphire project, I think. So he developed some devices, some plasma-based devices. Capacitor C, V is voltage up here. Okay, destroying the crater walls, blah, blah. Since electrons would not, now this part's important to understand for even if you're a normal sciencey person and you're not deep in the physics, you can understand this next part. Since electrons would not normally be expected to bind together due to their mutual Coulomb repulsion, a speculative model based on vacuum electromagnetic zero-point fluctuations was formed to explain the existence of EVs. Are all these women objectifying me, chat? Mandatory DEI training for all of you. Also, all you people that love the Nordics. If Nordics are your favorite kind of alien, mandatory DEI training for you as well. Now, back to the boring science. So, they immediately were like, okay, 0-point energy is the reason why these EVs are forming. And as we saw earlier, Ken Shoulders showed, oh shit, these balls of plasma prove 0-point energy. They prove cold fusion is real as well. The emerging laboratory evidence led investigators to consider the hypothesis that the Casimir effect may be a major contributing mechanism to the formation of EVs in microarc discharges. This conjecture is based on models by Casimir and Puthoff and Peistrup, suggesting that the generation of relatively cold, dense, non-neutral charged plasma results in charge condensation effects that may be attributable to a Casimir pinch effect. That is, overcoming the 0-point fluctuation-induced pressure forces. Or no, not overcoming. That is 0-point induced pressure forces. So naturally, your charges want to repel from one another. But in this case, they're coming together. So why are they coming together? Because we're pinching space-time down. We're pinching it down. We're creating this Casimir type effect, this pinch effect, the same way we do with the plates. But we can cut in place, right? We're not limited to just 2 plates. Okay. I don't know where I was. Oh, here we go. In which the inverse square Coulomb repulsion is overcome by an attractive inverse fourth law Casimir force to yield a stable semi-classical model of the electron in which a dense shell-like distribution of charge might suppress vacuum fields in the interior of the shell. So, creating a wormhole. However, initial application of Casimir's model found that the vacuum field inside the modeled electron was found to augment rather than offset the divergent Coulomb field, thus rendering the electron's self-energy divergent. Puthoff later resolved this problem by developing a self-consistent vacuum fluctuation model in which the net contribution to the point-like electron's self-energy by its Coulomb and vacuum field vanishes, thus rendering a stable infinite mass electron or finite mass electron. What he's saying here is that initially Casimir thought that, well, it should actually add to the Coulomb repulsion. It shouldn't actually do this. So, but then Puthoff came along and said, no, actually, like we're seeing it literally counteract. Like we're seeing the cold fusion happen. So we know it's happening. We need a better model. And came in and he fixed it. How can you monetize this idea? You can't really. You can't monetize core concepts of physics, but you kind of can because you can develop technology. You can invest in the right technologies that are going to be emerging. For me, cold fusion, the first person that figures cold fusion out where you can actually monetize it, they're going to make a lot of money. But you're going to have a lot of haters too. Shoulders and collaborators subsequently investigated different approaches to extracting useful energy from the vacuum ZPF by ways of exploiting this phenomenon, the EV phenomenon. Even though EVs can be easily produced in the labs, efforts to test this hypothesis have not met much success due to technical problems. However, this topic is ideal to pursue for future research. So if you want to ask me, Ashton, what is the best way to produce 0-point fluctuations? Well, the easiest way is probably just get plasma. And now you have a permanent dipole that's open. You create a plasma like that. Are you going to be able to do that anywhere in your backyard? No. In the future, anybody will be able to create that in their backyard. But for right now, you probably need a plasma lab or a laser lab to be able to pull it off. But science is there. Science is there, chat. Okay, next thing. Couple more. Next DIRD. Warp drives. So this is for chaotic good. Is it dark energy? Warp drives, dark energy, manipulation of extra dimensions. Okay, from the Defense Intelligence Agency. I mean, geez, chat. I'm spoiling you guys. This is, I think, another Davis one as well. The best ones are Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff papers. I could be wrong. One of these was written by somebody else. So warp drives here again, talking about the Casimir effect, Kaluza-Klein theory that I mentioned before, 1926. That's when we figured out there's this extra spatial dimension of energy. And really, this just builds on Miguel Alcubierre's work from 1994. And warp drive is just the slow version of wormhole. Toroidal higher dimension. And basically their warp bubble, they're trying to manipulate the thickness of it as well. But to me, warp drive is subluminal travel, slower than the speed of light. You're just making a geodesic path. You're making your own conveyor belt by pulling space around you. That's warp drive to me. As opposed to a wormhole where you're pulling that space around you so hard that you're actually just teleporting faster than the speed of light. So that's one of the papers right there. The next paper is wormholes. Wait, let me write this one down. Oh, I did. Wormholes, no, traversable wormholes, stargates, and negative energy. These are must-read papers, in my opinion. And again, the year on this is, these were all written before 2010. So some of these were like early 2000s. Traversable wormholes. This was like, just 10 years after Alcubierre. We're already writing papers about, well, wormholes are actually possible, looking at Einstein's general relativity. Like the math works out that a wormhole should exist. Examples of negative energy. And a lot of this comes down to like, how do we produce negative energy? All we need is negative energy. And now we can produce a wormhole easily. And so he's saying, well, we can see negative energy because we see the Casimir effect. This is how a gecko sticks to the wall. If you didn't know this, spoiler alert, geckos stick to the wall using the Casimir effect. So we know the effect is actually very powerful, powerful enough for a gecko to stick to the wall. And if we can manipulate it, we can scale it up. Now we have something that's very powerful. So then it's generating negative energy in the lab. This paper is actually really good because it explains the ways of generating negative energy in the lab, squeezing the quantum vacuum, squeezing a laser as well, gravitationally squeezed electromagnetic 0-point fluctuations, negative energy from the Casimir effect, dynamic Casimir effect using moving mirrors. These could just be matters. These could be ways of producing negative energy. And then the last one, Casimir effect, negative energy for traversable wormholes. We'll take a look at that part. So how is the Casimir effect over and over and over again, huh? Pretty wild. How long is this? Oh, we're not reading this whole thing. Oh, that was why. Okay, here it is. Okay, the electromagnetic Casimir effect can be used in principle to create a traversable wormhole. The energy density, that equation there, within a Casimir cavity is negative and manifests itself by producing a force of attraction between the cavity walls. But cavity dimensions must be made exceedingly small in order to generate a significant amount of negative energy. In order to use the Casimir effect to generate a spherically symmetric traversable wormhole through a radius of r, there needs to be a design. There's a need to design a cavity made of perfectly conducting spherically concentric thin plates with a plate separation of extremely small magnitude. So what they're saying there is you need to make two plates of a spherical formation that are very, very close together to one another. They're saying that's what it would take. To counteract the collapse of the cavity due to the Casimir force acting between the plates will have an equal electric charges placed upon them to establish adequate Coulomb repulsion. So we're seeing here that it's definitely a connection between your Coulomb repulsion and your Casimir attraction. And we're seeing now that this math and this theory is the same thing that's required for cold fusion and balls of plasma, is also the same thing that's required for a humanly traversable wormhole. That's weird. The idea that we can create a ball of plasma that pulls energy out of the vacuum is the exact same theory that we're using for making a humanly traversable wormhole, because we're interacting with the vacuum state, the 0-point fluctuations. These concepts are the same. This is also is ER equals EPR. At the small scales, quantum entanglement is fundamentally the same at the large scales as a wormhole. They're the same idea. Okay. Yeah, so what they're saying here is future work will be necessary to elucidate whether the various quantum field analogies of the Casimir effect can provide a more reasonable technical solution to the problem. So just because the Casimir effect exists doesn't mean we're going to use two plates. Two plates is not going to work. We need something else to pull it off. But that idea is important. That's what we need. We need to know that that idea was possible. Okay. Now, honorable mention to negative mass propulsion. And actually, this is the one I wanted to find as well. Geoffrey Landis. We're going to shout out to Landis. When I was looking for negative mass, I found this paper accidentally, which is also still really good. I don't see what year it is. But he references Morris, Robert Forward, and Bondi. Bondi was the first person to figure out negative energy states being possible. So we can see Bondi being mentioned here, Robert Forward, negative matter propulsion. And that was 1990. So that's a different Robert Forward paper. I like this one because, as first analyzed by Hermann Bondi in 1957, matter with negative mass is consistent with the structure of Einstein's general theory of relativity. Although initially the concept was considered just a theoretical curiosity, negative mass or matter, exotic matter, is now incorporated into the body of mainstream physics. Negative mass is a number of rather non-intuitive properties, which, first noted by Bondi and later commented on by Forward and Landis and others, results in possible applications for propulsion, requiring little or possibly no expenditure of fuel. As pointed out by Morris and Thorne and others, negative mass is also a requirement for any proposed faster-than-light travel. Negative mass and energy are required for faster-than-light travel. This paper presents the basic theory of negative mass by the ways in which it can manifest in contemporary physical theory and the counterintuitive properties that resulting in possible uses for space-time propulsion. Although negative mass has moved from a theoretical curiosity to a concept fundamental to contemporary understanding of physics, it is still not clear whether bulk negative mass can be manufactured or if it is limited to only appearing at the cosmological scale, like, for example, dark energy, or in the quantum, for example, the Casimir vacuum limit, or if it can be manufactured for propulsion mechanisms. So we're saying just because we don't see it out there might mean there's just a different answer. And that different answer is that there isn't negative mass. We have negative energy states, and mass and energy are interchangeable. So we can't think of it like negative mass. What we should be talking about is negative energy. Negative energy. Anywhere you see mass, you can change out the word energy because we know that E equals mc squared. So he explains how negative mass and negative energy interact, which I think is really important and pretty neat. Although negative energy density was rejected by Einstein, it's now commonly accepted. The mass of a vacuum is by definition zero. But in a quantum mechanical vacuum, however, while the time average of the energy is zero, the instantaneous value of the energy will fluctuate in pairs of virtual particles appearing and disappearing. Since empty space consists of the true vacuum plus these transient virtual particles, if the virtual particles have a positive mass, bare empty space must have a negative mass density. One way of manifesting this negative mass density is the Casimir vacuum. In the Casimir cavity, conductive plates bound a region. The boundary condition to these plates excludes some of the electromagnetic modes or wavelengths of the virtual photons present in the vacuum. So there's our Casimir effect. Casimir effect vacuum was proposed by Morse, Thorne, and Utsever as something that could serve as the negative energy to stabilize the wormhole throat. A similar effect means that the vacuum surrounding a black hole, the Hartle-Hawking radiation, is also of negative energy density as well. For the universe to expand faster than the speed of light, this requires a negative energy density. Dark energy is also an example of negative energy density. So again, when you hear people talk about dark energy is negative energy, this is why. The answer is in plain sight, just as Kimberly Jones just said in the chat. The answer is in plain sight. I thought there was a part about overcoming the repulsion. Oh, here it is right here. One can directly see the effect of mass is the opposite sign of charge. Charge acts oppositely to gravity. What happens is as the radial coordinate r comes increasingly closer to zero, the energy density of the electric field outside that radius becomes larger. And hence the mass interior to that radius r is smaller by an amount equal to the square of the electrical potential. At a certain distance from the charged particle, the time and the radial components of G swap from greater to unity than to less to unity, and gravity reverses to that of negative mass. For an electron, this occurs at a distance of 10 to the minus 34 centimeters, too small for the reversal of gravitational force. So this part right here is basically explaining why the orbs are converging together. It's because they're reaching a certain point where they hit this Schwinger limit of the energy, electromagnetic intensity outside of the region becomes so powerful, it creates an asymmetry in the space-time. So I like that paper by Landis. And then the one I really wanted was negative mass propulsion. Oh, here's another one by Robert Forward. This is the one that was just being referenced as well. So Robert Forward as well was legit. This one by Winterberg is the one that I was really trying to get to. This is the Black Vault version. This one was written by Winterberg. So F. Winterberg right here, as you see him, this is the same one. Negative mass propulsion. This is a dirt as well. So Winterberg was, let me just make sure I got all the donations. Yeah, we talked about that. Did Tom DeLonge get involved with this? How it put off? I guess you could say I'm doing something similar to what Tom DeLonge did, which is just being a citizen who's investigated this. And I've clearly realized that there's something 100% here to all of this. So I think that's the question, the answer to that question. So thank you everybody for those donations tonight. So F. Winterberg was taught under Heisenberg uncertainty principle Heisenberg. He was brought over from Germany as part of Project Paperclip. Okay. And it turns out he believes in a Planck ether. He believes in the ether of energy at the Planck scale. Exactly the same as we've been talking about. Amazing. So when people say, oh, who are the scientists that have been coming out? Quite a lot of scientists who are pretty known. Being a scientist that came over from Project Paperclip that was taught underneath Heisenberg, that's pretty high credentials. So Hal Puthoff apparently knows him because he got him to write one of the papers for the Dirds. Schrodinger's analysis of the Dirac equation gives us a hint for the existence of negative mass hidden behind positive masses. So he's already evoking quantum mechanics scientists. But their use for propulsion by reducing the inertia for matter, for example, in the limit of macroscopic bodies with zero rest mass depends on the technical solution to free them from their imprisonment by the positive masses. It appears that there are basically two ways this might be achieved: by the application of strong electromagnetic or gravitational fields, or by high particle energies. By searching for places in the universe where nature has already done this separation, and from where the negative masses can be mined. The first of these two possibilities, for all practical means, excluded, because if it was possible at all, it would depend on electromagnetic or gravitational fields with strength beyond what is technically attainable. Or is it technically unattainable? Or on extremely large, likewise not attainable particle energies. With regard to the second possibility, it has been observed that non-baryonic cold dark matter tends to accumulate near the centers of galaxies or in places in the universe which have large gravitational potential well. Because of the equivalence principle of general relativity, the attraction towards the center of a gravitational potential well produces by a positive mass is for negative masses the same as for positive masses. And large amounts of negative masses might have, over the course of billions of years, been trapped in these gravitational potential wells. Now, he's saying if there is negative mass, then it might be accumulated in certain points in the universe, potentially at the center of large sources of gravity. There might be a negative mass hidden in there that we just don't see down there. Now, the best part about this paper is actually the Planck ether hypothesis, which isn't even referenced for some reason there. I'm going to go back to this one. pretty sure this is in here. There it is right there. Page 6 or chapter 6, Planck ether. So notice as well, the theory of Bondi revisited. He's talking about negative energy. So in theory of Bondi is negative energy. Non-linear Newtonian theory of gravity. He's basically saying 0-point energy can explain gravity. Zitra-Buogong, he's saying the fact that we have these never-ending spinning particles is explanation of negative mass being possible. Planck ether hypothesis, he's saying that it's hidden in this extra dimension at the Planck scale. Planck just means very small scales that are out there. And then dynamic interpretation of Lorentz invariance, negative mass interpretation for the Ehrenhoff-Bohm effect. So page 23 on this as well. I mean, this is much more than what it was written in the abstract. That abstract's not very good. So he's saying you can interpret the Ehrenhoff-Bohm effect as being explainable by negative energy as well here. And the Planck ether is the same thing that I said before. I'm not actually going to go through all this. But this is why I normally would have ignored this paper. But once you understand these concepts more, you realize what Winterberg is talking about here. Winterberg is actually talking about 0-point energy. It's very clear. Negative energy, 0-point energy. You need to have this 0-point energy understanding of the universe to understand how negative energy is even possible. They're all talking about the same thing. So when it comes around time, like who deserves the credit? I don't know. They've all kind of figured it out. I don't understand why mainstream physics hasn't like just accepted this yet. Clearly, this is the answer. 0-point energy unifies the big stuff and the small stuff. Many different scientists have already figured it out. Nobody reads these papers. That's the true and sad fact of the stuff that I showed you. I think that's enough papers for tonight. If I look at them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 16 scientific papers we went through tonight, guys. 16. So when people say, and I've read every single one of these, every single one that I showed there today, I could give another 16 as well if we had another 2 hours to go through. Easily. And I don't keep track, but the answer is I've read a lot. And these scientific papers all line up to 0-point energy being real. Scientific, peer-reviewed papers, all out there on the internet. You can find every single one of them. And this is how I know that it's all legit, is that there's a whole area of science that's out there that I don't know why it's being ignored. It's just not accepted. Like that's really the only thing holding us back. I think that the plasma is the best mechanism for us to get a hold of this technology quickly, because we just have to figure out how to achieve this coherent plasma. And now you've got a little Jarvis floating around with you. We don't need to worry about metamaterials and stuff like that. Like just figure out the plasma stuff. We can turn it into a drone. I mean, we already have, so we know we can. And then that will push us to the next echelon. We might not be able to teleport like directly to Alpha Centauri yet, but you can see how then it's just a matter of how we abuse entanglement. And if we can turn entanglement into a resource, now we can entangle any 2 points in space and time that we want. Okay. Yes, mainstream scientists are sadly useful idiots at this point. That's really mainstream academia failed us. It let us down. Mainstream academics should be doing what I'm doing here tonight with you guys and what I've been doing on Secret Science Wednesday for this entire season. Today was the season finale of Secret Science Wednesday. Will it come back? I don't know. But we went through all of 0-point energy, exotic vacuum objects, free energy concepts, the role of magnetism and 0-point fluctuations in gravity itself. We showed all this science is real, all the scientific papers that show it's real. I will go ahead and add these scientific papers into the description so that you guys can have links to all of these and check them out yourselves, because the only way we can get people to understand is if they understand the science themselves. Because if they don't understand the science, it just seems like some gibberish magic. But if you do understand the science, then you look at this and you go, wow, this shows that 0-point energy is the answer. That's the Rosetta Stone. Thank you very much, Mally Mal. Appreciate you. I really do. I appreciate you guys. And we're going to keep doing content, guys. I'm thinking about, I don't know, we may shift it around. We may have a stream where we just kind of shoot the breeze for the next 1 or 2 tries while I figure out what I want to do on the next thing. But I think if people were just to look through this 12 volume set of Secret Science Wednesday that we've put out here, all the answers are there. All the answers you need. And if you complement it with the investigation into this missing plane, and you complement it with the research into 0 point free energy, using that 0 point energy to produce actual usable energy, you see the big picture. You see the big picture of what we're looking at here. You see why we covered it up. This science, this physics represents free energy. And it represents weapons. Clearly, it can be turned into very easily into a weapon that can disappear a plane out of space-time. So that's why I played at the beginning of the stream tonight, why I played my intro, even though it's not Malaysian Airlines Monday, because Robert Oppenheimer, I am become death, destroyer of worlds. This technology is a doomsday weapon, far surpassing anything that humanity has faced. So we have to understand that and respect that, because if we don't, then we are doomed for sure. Okay, let me see if I can find a good video clip to play us out with before we close tonight. For some reason, I'm thinking about Paul Sizz. Let's listen to this one.
When we talk about 0 point energy, what that means is that when everything comes down to rest, there's still energy left. It's like sea level in the ocean. And there is a constant flow of energy between matter and antimatter as it annihilates itself and recreates itself. It occurs in stars. All of these big star factories you see now with Hubble is a continual exchange of energy. And although the average is 0, that 0 may be a pretty high level above nothing at all. And what Sakharov and some of the physicists said is that it's this level that creates the background for the universe to exist. You know, there are people who have been experimenting with 0 point energy or try to tap 0 point energy for years. Every once in a while someone will do it accidentally. They'll call it cold fusion, but I don't think it's cold fusion. I just think it's a 0 point energy tap. Except for 3 people that I know, no one has been able to control it. When it happens for a short period of time, and it's almost always destructive. It's a coupling of the device with the energy that permeates space. Probably Tesla was as close to it when he said that if given the right energy system, the right electromagnetic spectrum, I can power a human base on Mars from Earth without any loss of energy. And in quantum physics and 0 point energy, that's a possibility.
Yeah, this is Paul Sizz, guys. Last name like CYZSZ, something like that. So we're going to play us off with the rest of Paul Sizz, then we're going to play the closer. But I just wanted to show some respect to him. He's another one of these engineers, never got due respect. Obviously, he understood this. Obviously, he knew about it. The reason why you're seeing these similarities is that all these engineers that worked in Black Projects, they all understood the real way to look at the universe. And they may have had some disagreements over some nuance, but they understood that space was not empty. They've understood this for decades. This video, Paul Sizz, is from like the early 2000s. So we've understood this for decades, which then should make you ask the question, how have they been covering this up, and why have they been covering this up? What are the ultimate implications of this, and how easily have they been covering it up? how easily. We're just a ragtag group of civilians, and we figured it out. And we broke it all apart just from open source data that's out there. Ask yourself that. That question may be more important than any of the others. How is it that we've been deceived so easily? Anyway, let's finish it, guys. Thank you, MH370X. I love you guys. Have a great night, everybody. Free Energy Friday. We're going to take a look at this Maglev Stefan Marinov device that we were looking at the other day. We're going to look at that. There's a really interesting series of stuff, comments in that. So have a good one, guys. Enjoy Paul Sis. Play us out, brother. Rest in peace, Paul Sis.
But literally, Sakharov and the number of people that were working on it, I think, are very, very convincing arguments that the fabric of space is like an ocean, an energy ocean, in which solid energy is floating on it, and solid energy is the mass. And if that's true, then gravity waves exist, and in fact, everything goes back to Heaviside equations, and it's waves, not particles. And the quantum is now not mass, but time. And if that's true, then there's a whole different, you look at the whole universe in a different light. What do you think would happen if you introduced an ability to tap? 0-point energy represents about 40 to 50 megawatts of power per cubic inch of space. That's a lot of power. That's 4,600 million watts of power. And if you could tap it at will, then no one would have to sell gasoline or oil anymore. You would just tap into it. It would be like taking and going out to the Great Lakes and taking out one drop and using it. You'd hardly miss it. The people that, if there are a group of people in the world that have access to it, I don't think they know how to let go of it because they're afraid who's going to get their hands on it. Even though there'd be tremendous benefit to mankind in getting us energy sources that we wouldn't have the problems we have with today, they're also worried about that somebody could take that same energy source and do the equivalent of what they did with the coal, of instead of blowing a hole inside, just obliterating the whole ship.
Yeah, and so that's what they're worried about, right? They're worried that somebody can create a suitcase bomb that can destroy the whole planet. Food for thought. Okay, once again, MH270X, love you guys. Peace out, everyone.
In the fields where the skies are wide, talking about a journey through the cosmic ride. Einstein and Thorne, they set the stage for a trip through time across the space age. Wormholes connect distant points in space, traversable paths to a far off place. No black holes pull, no crushing weight, just a cosmic tunnel to a distant gate. Talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Bowling 777 through a wormhole flow. We're talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Bowling 777 through a wormhole flow. Exotic matter, negative energy's the key to stabilize the wormhole for you and me. Quantum vacuum, squeeze so tight, creating conditions for this wondrous flight. Static fields and lasers in the lab they play, generating forces in a new kind of way. gravitational squeezing, Casimir's force, negative zones we need to stay the course.
Talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Boeing 777 through a wormhole flow.
Thin shell formalism plate so fine, spherical geometry we realign, energy conditions that we must defy. For a stable wormhole, let's give it a try. Coulomb forces balancing the plates, creating the throat, open the gates, from Earth to the stars in a single bound. A shortcut through space profound. Engineers and dreamers hold the key to future worlds and what we could be. With science in hand, we forge ahead through the cosmic paths that we now tread.
We're talking wormholes, stargates, negative energy, travel through the cosmos, it's our destiny. MH370, where did it go? Boeing 777 through a wormhole flow.
From the fields to the stars, we break the chains. Understanding the universe, we make the gains. Lil Hula Crunk shines, bringing truth to light. Through his music, we'll explore the night. With wormholes and stargates, our path is clear.